is there. There we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a wonderful break. We're going to continue on the testimony. Ms. Sawyer, you're going to call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State will call Tyler Springer to the stand.
Okay, so I need you to raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, well, don't you go and have a seat there. Get yourself comfortable. You've got an aerial mic there in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, I need you to state your name and spell it for me so that my court reporter can get used to your diction.
Gotcha. Tyler Springer, Tyler-Spr.
Hold on, I know you got a little bit more than that.
Tyler Matthew Springer. Okay. Okay, Tyler Springer.
I gotta spell your middle name since you threw it out there.
Okay. Tylermatthew-Springer.
Can you hear him okay, Madam Court Reporter?
Yes, sir.
You all hearing him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Springer, did you attend college?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did you go to college at?
Mount Carmel College of Nursing.
And what degree did you receive?
Bachelor's of Science in Nursing.
And when did you receive that, sir?
2014, I believe.
And after that, did you become licensed as a nurse?
Yes, ma'am.
When did that happen?
2000, I think sometime in 2014, like the end of 2014.
Were you employed after you received your RN?
Yes.
Where was that at, sir?
Mount Carmel West ICU.
And how long were you employed at Mount Carmel West?
5 years.
Okay, from what date to what date?
I'm not sure the dates, but 2015 to 2019, I believe.
And why did you leave?
We were let go by Mount Carmel.
Okay. And at some point, did you have to appear before the nursing board because of incidents at Mount Carmel?
Yes.
And did anything happen?
Well, I didn't know. I did not have to appear in front of the nursing board. There was just an agreement with them.
Okay. And what was that agreement with the nursing board?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll permit it.
Go ahead and answer.
1 year license suspension with 2 year probation.
And when did that license suspension occur?
On my birthday, November 18th of last year.
Do you...
Or not last year, the year before that, sorry.
2020?
2020.
Okay. Do you currently have your license back?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you currently employed?
Yes.
And without saying where, what are you currently doing?
Pre-certification nursing. It's not anything that's directly patient care, more so just looking at clinical information.
Okay. Let's talk about your employment at Mount Carmel. You indicated that occurred sometime in 2015?
Yes.
And what were you doing at that time for Mount Carmel?
I was just an ICU registered nurse.
Okay. What were your job duties as an ICU nurse?
Taking care of very sick patients that would come through.
And when you say taking care of, explain to us a little bit about what you would do in that position.
Based off of the situation that was occurring with the actual patients that came through, changing them, bathing them, doing whatever it is that they need as far as, if they need intubated or lined or anything like that, putting an A-line in or a large IV in the neck, things like that we would help assist with.
Okay, and you got a little bit of a low voice, so I'm going to remind you to speak up
Yep.
so everybody can hear. Did you work any particular shift as an ICU nurse?
In the beginning, I worked nights. It's more so generally, I would say if you're the low person on the totem pole, you don't really get to choose, but I started out on nights and then I ended up transitioning to days.
Do you remember approximately how long you were on the night shift?
I want to say in the beginning, it was probably the first year was all night shift, and then it started to kind of go back and forth. I'd work some days during the day, and then, if they needed help on nights, I would help pick up on nights or vice versa.
Okay. Fair to say throughout the time period you were at Mount Carmel, you still continued to work some night shifts then?
Yes.
We've heard a lot of testimony about obtaining medication and how nurses do that. Can you explain that to us also, what you would do in your experience?
You said with just obtaining medications?
Correct.
We would get it through the Pyxis machine usually, or it was sent up via like a tube with the tube station from the pharmacy itself.
Okay. Tell us what you would have to do to access medication via the Pyxis.
So they would put in an order in which you could go and you could get it out, or sometimes they didn't necessarily have it in, but if you, and sorry, I'm trying to think here because it's been a while. If they put the order in, you could still override the medication, or you could still override it even if they didn't put the actual order in itself into the actual system. I forget the system that they use particularly, but it could either be scheduled and you can go and get it, or sometimes you could override it despite if there is an order that had been given by a particular doctor.
All right, so you said if they put the order in. Who is they?
The doctors.
Okay, and they put it into the electronic medical record? That's what we've been calling it.
Yes.
All right. How would you know then that you were to go get the medication?
Sometimes there's like an icon that would show like review orders or whatever it was, and it would just show like, hey, this medication needs to be given, or you could look at the MAR. I don't know what the meaning of that is, but you could look there to see what medications could be ordered.
Okay. And you said sometimes they put it in, sometimes they don't. Again, the doctors?
Yes.
So that would be what we've been terming a verbal order?
Yes.
Right. You also mentioned getting it via override. Explain to us what you mean by that.
So basically, you could go to the Pyxis machine, say you got a verbal order. You could go, and it actually happened all the time. We saw nurses do it all the time on day shift and on night shift.
Okay.
You could just go pick out whatever the medication it was that was ordered that you got a verbal for, and then you could withdraw it at that time from the Pyxis via override. You can just look up the medication.
What's the difference between pulling it via override and not pulling it via override?
I don't recall.
Okay, that's fair. And you had said earlier, I could pull it via override or I could wait for them to approve it. Who's them in that case?
It would be pharmacy would be the person that I think would sign off on the medication or whatever was ordered.
And if there's an override, has pharmacy signed off on that medication?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Now, what is your understanding of pharmacy's role if you pull medication through an override?
That I don't recall.
Okay, that's fair too. It's been a while.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Describe to us what the ICU at Mount Carmel looked like as far as how it was set up.
I would say it was shaped like a U.
Okay.
U-shaped.
How many nursing stations, for example?
Altogether, I believe there was 4, I believe.
Okay. How many floors did the ICU at Mount Carmel West consist of?
1 at the time.
Okay, so when you were in there, was it 1 floor?
Yes.
And you mentioned the Pyxis machines. How many Pyxis machines?
3.
All right. Mr. Springer, I'm going to start by talking to you about some of the patients you were involved with that we are here for right now. So, and I'm going to start with Bellisari. Sure. Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 1E. Can you tell us which patient we're talking about here today?
Joanne Bellisari.
And what was her admit date?
Admission date was April 22nd, 2015.
And what date was she discharged from the hospital?
May 10th, 2015.
All right, so I want to talk to you specifically about your involvement. And I'm going to start with a note that you made on May 4th of 2015, and I'm going to direct your attention right there at the top so it doesn't fall over on me, right? All right, can you tell us, is that your name up there at the top?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the date and time of this order?
May 4th, 2015 at 4:18 in the morning.
What are you doing at this time with Ms. Bellisari?
Can I read this?
Sure.
Okay. So it looks like we are changing over the tube from one side to the other. Typically, we would do that during the early morning hours before shift change.
Okay, you said tube. What are we talking about when you say tube?
Endotracheal tube, the intubation tube that goes into the actual lungs down through the throat.
So is Ms. Bellisari on a ventilator at this point?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us about your involvement in changing the endotracheal tube at this point.
Basically, we're next to the patient, and we are changing it from left to right or right to left, whichever way it was.
Okay. Were there any issues that arose at this point?
Yes, so it appears that, from what I can read from here, that it looks like she became very agitated, biting down on the tube, so therefore she was more so awake, not going with the actual ventilator itself, being able to do its work, so therefore we weren't able to go from left to right, left to right. So therefore, she became agitated, and it looks like we ended up giving some medication to help calm her down.
Okay, what medication was administered?
Looks like fentanyl and Dilaudid.
Okay. And how much fentanyl was given at this point?
200 micrograms of fentanyl.
And how much Dilaudid?
1 milligram.
And Dilaudid is what as far as the actual medication?
I guess I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Is that midazolam?
No, it is not. It's an opioid medication.
So that's hydromorphine?
Yes, hydromorphine,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so this is May 4th, 2015 at 4:18?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention over to the page where we talk about the MAR, the medical administration record that you just talked about.
Okay.
All right, so middle of the page here. Would that be the 200 micrograms of fentanyl from that incident?
Not that I recall, no. 337. Yes.
Okay, and I note here you've got a pain score. What is the pain score you have at this point?
As an 8.
Okay, and then below that is the hydromorphone order?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, the pain score?
Is an 8.
And which doctor gave you these prescription orders?
Dr. Husel.
Did you administer those prescriptions?
Yes.
Did that resolve the issue with the pain score?
Not that I recall.
All right, what if I show you 5-4? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to direct your attention at the top here.
Yes, it did resolve the pain, the pain and the agitation.
Okay, so after the 200 micrograms of fentanyl and the Dilaudid, what pain score does she now have?
0.
I don't have it. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's part of the So at least with Ms. Bellisari, that 200 micrograms appeared to relieve the pain.
Yes.
I'm next going to direct your attention to James Allen. And I've marked this for identification as State's Exhibit 8D. And can you tell us who the patient is in this case?
Yes, James Allen,
And what date was he admitted to the hospital?
May 24, 2018.
And what date was he discharged, sir?
May 28th, 2018.
All right, and unfortunately, you're in the middle of the list here, so
Okay.
I'm going to direct your attention, and I'm going to show you the top first. What is this? Can you explain what this direct charting flow sheet is for us? What's that mean to you as the nurse?
It just looks like the oxygen delivery and the pain score charting that would be in our charting system that we used.
Okay, and explain to us, what do you as the nurse assigned to a patient have to do as far as charting for any patient that you're caring for?
Normal assessments, we would just go in and we would, chart what they look like, the physical exams, the pain scores, if they had IVs, things like that. Does that answer the question?
Sure, and approximately how often, if you're on the night shift, you come on at 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
Leave at 7 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
So during that time period, how often would you check on these patients approximately?
Every 2 hours.
Okay, so I'm going to direct your attention to the middle here, and do you see your name in there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, there's a laser pointer in front of you.
Okay.
Can you use that to point that out to the jury where you're at?
Right there.
All right, so what date is this on, sir?
May 26, 2018.
And looks like you're charting every 2 hours like you just told us.
Yep.
And what was the pain score that you gave Mr. Allen this during your time period of involvement?
0.
What does that mean to us?
Well, more importantly, what does it mean to him?
All right, what does it mean to you, sir? Is he in any pain?
No.
Okay. And I see the words here, nasal cannula. Am I
Yes.
saying that correctly? What is
Yeah.
that?
It's just, it's a tube that goes into your nose, has little prongs, and it provides oxygen to the patient.
So at this point, Mr. Allen's not on a ventilator?
Correct.
All right, and then I'm going to direct your attention to the bottom of this same document. Let me show you this top level. What are you looking for in charting at this time?
Pain intensity scale, is pain level acceptable?
All right, I'm going to direct your attention to the very bottom. Is that you?
Yes.
And what is your finding regarding the acceptability of pain?
That they are having pain, yes.
Well, let me go back to the top.
Is pain level acceptable? Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little hard when the top
Sorry.
cuts it off, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Sorry.
All right, and then going to the next page again, same thing as pain level acceptable. And is that again you at the top?
Yes, ma'am.
And your finding
Yes.
that it's acceptable?
Yes.
All right, and I want to just point out here, it's a reference to CPOT. What is that, sir?
That I don't know.
Okay.
It looks like it's a pain scale, pain intensity scale, but I don't recall. It's just been a long time, but I don't recall what tool
Okay.
or scale I guess we would use.
All right. Well, and let's go back just a minute. What type of training, when you started working at Mount Carmel, what type of training did you receive?
A lot.
Tell us about that.
It was just, there was a checklist. I can't recall everything. But basically, if there was a pain score, I was taught that there was a pain score of 0 to 10.
Okay. And then was there any when you first started, set orientation or training that you had to go through at that time?
Yes.
Tell us about that a little bit.
You had a preceptor that you would follow around. I do recall that I had multiple ones. It wasn't just one. I know that they tried to keep you with the same person, but I do recall when I was there was multiple nurses that I followed that precepted me, per se. Taking care of different types of patients. They tried to do more so along the lines of cardiac patients, stroke patients, palliative patients, just different types of patients, and helping assist with putting an arterial line in or a large IV in the neck, or I don't know. There was a lot.
Okay. Was it a kind of sit down and you learn things, or did you learn on the job?
Learn on the job.
All right, so redirecting your attention back to Mr. Allen, and I'm going to talk Glasgow coma score. What's that mean to you?
I do not recall.
But that was something you used at Mount Carmel at the time?
From this, yes, it looks like it, yes.
All right, I'm going to... Do you see your name on here?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point that out to us?
Yep. Right there.
All right, and what score was given?
14.
And then again with Mr. Allen, Richmond Agitation Scale, known as the RAS, I think.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I do not recall.
But again,
It's just
something
been a
you
long
would have
time.
used during that time period?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, and I'm going to direct your attention to about the middle. Do you see your name on here?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and can you point that out to us?
Yes. Right there.
All right, and it says see below T623, and it goes down to T770. Do you know what that means?
No idea.
All right. So I'm going to direct your attention. All right, and I see here at the bottom a T77 connected to the Richmond Agitation Scale, and that was the last number on your. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right.
I just saw yes.
What do you have here as the Richmond Agitation Scale?
Looks like drowsy, -1, not fully alert, but has sustained awakening.
Okay. And at least at the time you were doing this at Mount Carmel, you had been trained on that scale?
I do not recall.
Okay. All right, Mr. Springer, I'm going to direct your attention to State's Exhibit 2F. And what patient is this regarding?
Ryan Hayes.
And do you remember Ryan Hayes?
Yes.
Why do you remember him specifically?
Basically because it was probably the highest, amount of medication that I've given to someone. But also with the rise of all this, it's more so just been brought to my attention.
Okay. This was probably the patient you got disciplined for, or at least put on administrative leave
Your
for?
Honor, he's already answered the question.
I'll sustain. Let's move on.
What date was Ryan Hayes admitted to the hospital, sir?
April 2nd, 2017.
And what date was he discharged?
April 4th, 2017.
All right. All right. Mr. Springer, I'm going to direct your attention to the pain score area. Do you see your name on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point that out to us?
Yep. Right there.
All right, so this would be on April 2nd, 2017?
Yes.
Night shift?
Day shift.
Day shift, all right.
No, yeah, night shift, sorry.
Okay. What pain score on April 2nd of 2017 in the night going into April 3rd in the early morning did you assign to Mr. Hayes?
0.
And then I'm going to direct your attention a little bit further down. Do you see your name on here?
Yes.
Can you point to it again for us?
Right there.
And what about a little further up?
Oh, there. 0.
Okay. And keep going down. Where's the next time you see you?
Right there.
Okay. What date is that on, sir?
4/3/2017.
At what time? I'm okay if you just say that.
1922.
There you go. And what other time?
2110. Yeah, 2110.
What pain score did you give Mr. Hayes at this time?
0.
Do you remember what 0 meant as far as a pain score?
Just no signs of pain.
Do you remember Mr. Hayes' condition at the time you were treating him?
I do. Is it more so like what brought him in, what
Okay.
came to the ICU? Is that to answer your question?
Yes. What do you remember about him?
I know that he was a full arrest. Came in through the ER. Was found down. I think he was found down for about 10 minutes. He was in a bathtub, and basically they did multiple rounds of CPR, ACLS, to get him back to the hospital, or get him to the hospital, and then at the time he was transferred to the ICU somehow. I don't believe that I admitted him, but I know that he was intubated and on multiple medications, drip IV medications per se, if that answers your question.
Okay. Was he on any pain medication during the time period he had 0 pain scores?
I don't recall.
Okay. All right, I'm going to direct your attention to level of consciousness, CAM. What does this mean to us?
I don't recall what the CAM is, but if it's dealing with the level of consciousness, it's just seeing what their level of consciousness is, if that answers your question.
Sure. Do you see yourself on these?
Yes, I do.
Can you point those out to us?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, and what date is that on, sir?
April 2nd, 2017.
And what do you note as far as his level of consciousness for Mr. Hayes?
It's charted as comatose.
Okay. And do you see yourself on here anywhere else?
Yes.
And where is that, sir?
Right here.
What date is that on?
April 3rd, 2017.
And what is his level of consciousness at this point?
Comatose.
All right. Going to direct your attention to another page where it talks about cough reflex and gag reflex. What is that? What are you looking for with these two?
Their cough reflex or gag reflex.
Okay. Why is this important?
It's been a long time. I don't really recall.
Okay. Do you see your name on there, sir?
Yes.
And where is that? Can you point that out to us?
Yes, it is. Right here.
Okay, and what date is that?
April 2nd, 2017.
What did you find regarding the cough reflex
It was absent.
and the gag reflex?
It was absent.
And anywhere else that you see your name?
Yes, right there.
And what date is that?
April 3rd, 2017.
And what do you find regarding the cough reflex
Is absent.
and the gag reflex?
Absent.
Okay, do you remember a order for palliative withdrawal, palliative extubation of Mr. Hayes that occurred on April 3rd, 2017?
I recall that we were waiting for the son to arrive to make the decision for a palliative withdrawal.
Okay. What was your role regarding this palliative extubation?
The nurse that would potentially, if I was there when when the son was to arrive, to help with the palliative withdrawal. Nurses helped all the time, day and night, different patients.
Okay. Do you remember Troy Rudman coming up to assist with this?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I do know that I recall that night, obviously we were waiting for the son to get there. I believe he arrived and made the decision to extubate palliative withdrawal. And I was getting another patient in the room, a couple rooms down, I think. It was a full arrest. And I think that if I recall, he wanted to withdraw, and Troy was there to assist while I was to get my other patient kind of settled in and to get it to where they were stabilized to where I could get back into the room.
Okay. And did you get back into Mr. Hayes' room?
Yes.
And at that point, Did you receive a request for a medication order that you filled?
Yes.
And what date and time did this occur at?
April 3rd, 2017.
And who gave you the order?
Dr. Husel.
And I'm going to turn the page and direct your attention to the middle of the page here. How much fentanyl were you ordered to?
1,000 micrograms.
Do you recall how many vials of fentanyl that would be?
If I recall, 10.
Okay. And any other medication that you were ordered to draw at this time?
Looks like hydromorphone and midazolam.
All right. Hydromorphone being the Dilaudid we've talked about before.
Yes, ma'am.
How many milligrams of Dilaudid?
10 milligrams.
And you said midazolam, how many milligrams of midazolam?
10 milligrams.
And again, what date and time were those two?
April 3rd, 2017 at 23:16.
So the fentanyl, the Dilaudid, and the Versed all together for Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Are you aware of whether or not Mr. Rudman had administered those exact same doses to Mr. Hayes about 20 minutes earlier?
I was not.
What did you do at this point? You were given these orders.
I would draw the medication up and go and give the medication to the patient.
Okay, so you withdraw from where?
From the Pyxis.
And do you remember whether you awaited for approval from the pharmacy or did this via an override?
Override.
And then once you withdrew this medication, what did you do?
I went to my room, obviously got the verbal order. We put the order in. Actually, we put the order in, overrode, and then I got the medication out and went and administered to the patient.
To Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Was Mr. Hayes already extubated at this time?
Yes.
So that was done prior to you arriving in the room?
Yes.
Was there any family there at that point?
I believe the son was there.
And you said you got the order. Who did you get the order from?
Dr. Husel.
All right, and Mr. Spinner, I'm going to direct your attention back to, this is again 2F, patient records for Ryan Hayes, and this is the pain intensity score. Now, did you enter a pain intensity score at this time when you administered the 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl, the 10 milligrams of hydromorphone, and the 10 milligrams of Versed?
Yes.
What pain score did you give Mr. Hayes?
A 10.
What did you base that on?
I anticipated that he had pain. I know that he was turning blue. Also, you have to think, too, that with the compressions that he had and the healing process, that he's probably going to have some pain with that as well.
Okay. Now, you said compressions from the CPR?
Yes, ma'am.
That he had before he even got to the hospital.
Yes.
But what pain score did you give him before that?
A 0.
Okay.
0.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Diana?
Bias? Or Mr. Nash, I'm sorry. I thought Mr. Bias was up. My fault.
You know, sometimes we mix it up.
They're right there, Diana.
Thank you. Paula?
Yeah.
I am going to show the second page of the flow chart.
Okay.
On Alan that takes it to the other scores.
Sure. Okay. Did he do those?
No, but I'm going to show it.
I may object to that. Must be passed. Okay.
Well, good afternoon.
Hi.
Diane Menashe. Good morning. Good morning. Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. Husel. Diane Marie Menashe.
Yeah, right.
I haven't said Marie in a long
You'll be
time.
spelling it.
Want to go back through some of the things that you testified to, and I'll start with Mr. Hayes, the last patient that you just talked about. Do you remember you were interviewed by Columbus Police Department in this, at some point with respect to this patient. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And fair to say that that was in December of 2018,
Yes.
specifically December 7th of 2018. Does that sound right?
Yes.
And in that interview, you had indicated that there was kind of a hesitancy or hold with respect to Mr. Hayes, had you not, because the day shift had called the son and everyone was waiting for the son to arrive.
Yes.
And the son, as you indicated and recall, was he not the next of kin or power of attorney for Ryan Hayes?
Yes, ma'am.
And you indicated to police, correct, that the son was coming from North Carolina?
Yes.
And so that's 6-7-ish hours from Columbus, Ohio. Would that be fair to say?
Fair to say.
And in that process, it's actually the hospital that called the son. Is that how you recall it?
I don't recall how I know that I didn't call, but I don't recall who actually called the son.
That was my next question. You weren't the one that called.
Correct.
But there was a pause waiting for the son to arrive.
Correct.
And the pause lingers into or goes into the night shift. Is that correct?
Yes.
And ultimately the son arrives.
Yes.
Without going into what was said, fair to say that there was a lot of tension between the patient and the son.
Yes.
There was, when the son arrived, it was not a warm feeling that he exhibited, in your opinion, with respect to his father. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I asked this to determine what you did based on what was said, but isn't it true that when the son arrived, he said, pull the plug?
Yes.
And then that indicated a code status change?
Yes.
And then the medication orders were placed for the palliative extubation?
That I recall, yes. Well, it would have been, yes, we would have been told to actually palliative extubate, yes.
And ultimately, as the next of kin or power of attorney, if you know based on your experience that he was the one that, the son, was the one that had to make that final decision.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to talk about, we'll go through the Ryan Hayes records. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2F. I remember in your December of 2018 interview, you said, did you not, that you had done a significant number of palliative withdrawals?
Yes.
I think you indicated thousands, but how many had you done as of 2018, just in your course of your career?
I don't recall the number, but I know that I had done multiple.
Okay, and so Mr. Hayes was not your first palliative extubation?
No, ma'am.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2F, and just to orient ourselves, fair to say this looks like the medical records you were shown for Ryan Hayes.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to go through them if we could. With respect to, I'll just go right to the direct charting flow sheet. You were asked questions about your indication here on 4-2 that the pain score was 0. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And fair to say that 4-2 was the day that Mr. Hayes had arrived in a code situation as an overdose.
Yes.
And you talked about on your direct that when you were trained at Mount Carmel, you had extensive training. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And fair is it not that you were trained that at Mount Carmel that the pain score was 0 to 10?
Yes.
Based on your training at Mount Carmel West as a nurse, fair fair to say 10 was the highest level of pain.
Yes.
And in your experience as a nurse, if you recall, were there times when you rated pain a 2?
Not that I recall, but
Okay. What about a 5?
not that I recall, but potentially yes.
Okay. There's other numbers in between 0
Yeah,
and 10.
yes.
That's my point.
Yes.
And I will get to you and other numbers in a second. But you indicate a 0 here on 4/2 on the day that Mr. Hayes comes into the hospital. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
And then down here on 4/3, you indicate 10 in 2 places at 23:16.
Yes.
Do you see the time there?
Yes, 23:16, yes.
Okay. And I think the point was made 0 to 10, but you would agree with me that more than 24 hours has passed between those differing pain scores?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor, just ask for some. I want to go now to the fentanyl order that you were asked about on 4/3. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
And showing you here, I'm assuming that you had an opportunity to review the MAR record for Ryan Hayes in advance of your testimony today?
Yes.
And so it looks as if it does it not that Troy Rudman placed an order for fentanyl of 1,000 micrograms, and the time on that is 22:57.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I want to go down here to where it indicates this fentanyl order is, it indicates that your name is by that. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what time does that appear to have been done?
23:16.
Okay, so how much time approximately was that after the order by Mr. Nurse Rudman was placed?
15 to 20 minutes.
Talk to us about fair to say pain as a matter of practice with respect to nurses is checked sometimes on a 15-minute interval. Is that fair to say?
It depends. It could depend on the patient's family. You're checking more often, more frequently if they think that the patient's in pain, or Troy helped with palliative extubating. I wanted to go check on my patient to make sure, check on family, check on my patient, see how he was doing, per se, if that answers your question.
It does, because I remember in your interview with the police, you said, did you not, and I think you said, did you not, that you can't stress enough that your entire life, right, in your heart and with respect to your family, you've never wanted to harm anyone.
No.
And that was true on 4/4 of 2017, was it not?
True.
You wanted to provide comfort to Mr. Hayes.
Oh, absolutely.
And with that intent of providing comfort to Mr. Hayes, you put in this order for 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
And you also spoke of the other order that you entered as well, in addition to the fentanyl.
Yes.
The question was asked if you had known about the administration of the previous 1,000.
No, I did not.
And you indicated you had not.
No, I had not. I do not recall it.
I want to go here and here. When you entered this order in, and you would agree with me that this is your name here.
Yes, ma'am.
That the pain scores indicated is 10.
Yes.
And that is after, in hindsight, we know that 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl was given.
I don't know how much was given, but I do know that, and you can't, I don't know if any medications were given at all. I don't recall. any medications being given at all. But I do know that Troy had extubated him, and then I went after I got my other patient and checked on the patient, or Mr. Hayes.
So then this is, I think, maybe a more fair question. What we know is that when you arrived on scene and when you placed this order, you indicated that the pain score was a 10.
Yes, ma'am.
And then again, when you placed the Dilaudid order for 10 milligrams, you also indicated there, did you not, that the pain score was 10?
Yes, ma'am.
So at 23:16, pain score 10 for patient Ryan Hayes.
Yes.
Fair to say that at any point in time during your career, you wouldn't have input a 10 unless you believed at the moment it was a 10.
Yes.
Just need to speak up for the court.
Yes.
I want to go to now talk about patient Joanne Bellisari, showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1E. Does that seem to indicate that those are the records you were shown with respect to Ms. Bellisari?
Yes, ma'am.
I just note this so we can see it, but fair to say down here, this appears to be a pain response form from you, does it not?
Yes, ma'am.
And I just note that there are occasions when you note that the pain has been relieved from medication, do you not?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. There are times, as indicated by this medical record, when you note that pain has been relieved from the medication.
Yes.
You were asked specifically about this event on 5/4 of 2015.
Yes.
I want to scroll down because I don't expect you to memorize it. Ms. Bellisari came to Mount Carmel West on 4/22,
Yes.
and her discharge date or date of passing, as we now know it, is 5/10.
Yes.
5/4 is kind of, it's in the middle a bit, right? It's 6 days from when she passed.
Yes.
So I want to focus on this because this 200 micrograms of fentanyl was an order placed by Dr. Husel.
That I don't recall.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't show it.
Okay, and that was your testimony on direct. Let me.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to show you.
There's a lot. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. I'll go here if we could. Dr. William Husel. Does that look familiar?
Yes.
Okay. And here's why I just want to ask about this, because the number, it was 200, was it not?
Yes.
And a milligram of Dilaudid. This man right here.
Yes.
And you were asked whether it actually relieved the pain or not. Remember those lines of questioning on direct?
Yes.
I just want to walk through the note together if we could. Patient became very agitated in changing the tube.
Yes.
Because changing the tube, that's the trach tube, is it not?
Yes, ma'am.
Can be painful.
Yes.
And you have seen that in your experience as a nurse.
Yes, I can recall multiple times where we would change. It's very uncomfortable, I would say.
And so to provide comfort to that patient, in your capacity as a nurse, an order of 200 micrograms of fentanyl and 1 milligram of Dilaudid was ordered by Dr. William Husel.
Yes.
You weren't asked about it, but would you agree that the note goes on to say, even with 200 and 1 milligram of Dilaudid, what does that next sentence say?
Still unable to change tube from right to left. Tube left on right side due to patient biting down on the tube.
And you would agree with me not, based on your experience as an ICU nurse, that patient biting down on the tube could be an expression or indication of pain?
Potentially.
or discomfort.
Yes.
And that's after the 200 micrograms was given.
Right.
And notably, this event right here is when Ms. Bellisari was on a ventilator,
Yes.
not when she's been extubated.
Correct.
And you know what? Sometimes there's a method to my questioning. One moment while I pull this record up. The pages aren't numbered, Your Honor. No, I'm just explaining my delay. I'll just show it to you. I need this right here. No, just give me a second here. One moment, Your Honor. I want to find this. I had asked you earlier if you'd ever used numbers other than 1 and 10. Do you remember that?
Sure. Yes.
Directing your attention to this 200 micrograms of fentanyl that was ordered with by Dr. William Husel. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes.
I just note here, your order,
Yes.
you performed the administration of this medication?
Yes, ma'am.
And the pain score that you've indicated right there is what?
Is an 8.
Okay, let me... go back, if I can, to Mr. Ryan Hayes.
Okay.
Also showing you what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit 2F. Also just want to make sure, and I left this out, this is Mr. Hayes' MAR. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Okay. And down here, where the fentanyl order was placed with respect to the 1,000 that you administered, would you also agree with me that the indication you've noted is pain relieved with medication, and you noted no?
Yes.
So that's separate and apart, is it not, that entry point from the 10 as a pain score?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Pain score 10?
Yep.
You input that?
Yep.
And separate question, pain relieved with medication?
It says no.
Then going on, does it not, with respect to the MAR, it indicates that pain relieved with medication is continued to be no.
It says no, yes.
And then we've got the pain score 10 on the heels of the pain relieved with medication.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk now about Mr. Allen. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 8D. Does that appear to be the record of James Allen that you were shown on direct?
Yes.
Just want to go through some of the questions that you were asked about. And I just want to orient you, if it's okay. Showing you page 1, you were asked questions with respect to pain scales that you gave on this sheet. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
If I can flip to the next page, fair to say that based on the medical record...
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He's not anywhere in that area, and he's not after it, so it's not something he would have been able to even review in the course of his job.
Okay, so...
Let's rephrase.
When these pain scales are entered, Mr. Allen is not on a ventilator, is he?
No.
So, in your experience and training as an ICU nurse, a patient's condition can change drastically in the ICU, even between minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And hours.
Yes, ma'am.
And days.
Yes, ma'am.
And when someone's on a ventilator, things can really change.
Oh, yeah, yes.
And that's with respect to pain, comfort, discomfort, all those things.
Yes, ma'am.
So I ask you, because you were asked on direct examination about the Glasgow coma score that you indicated right here on 526. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. But we know that Mr. Allen lived until 528.
Yes.
And fair to say that he was not on a ventilator on 526.
Yes, he was not.
And so would it surprise you, or would it be unusual based on your training and experience as an ICU nurse, that someone's Glasgow score could go down over the course of an hour, 2 days, or 24 hours?
I don't recall the Glasgow coma scale or Glasgow coma score, but I would say yes.
And isn't that kind of the point of charting periodically, is because in the ICU, things can change quickly?
Yes.
Experience as an ICU nurse at Mount Carmel West working the night shift. Do you recall an estimated number of times that you were in code situations with Dr. Husel?
I don't recall, but I mean, I worked. Him and Hagris, I think, switched off on and off certain days, so it would just depend. But I can't recall.
Are codes something unusual or not unusual in the ICU?
I would say that they are usual. They can happen.
And because I think on direct you indicated that people in the ICU are very sick people.
Yes, ma'am.
And a code situation takes place when someone is actively dying?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And if a person comes out of code, then essentially their life has been saved?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that during your time as a nurse at Mount Carmel West, as an ICU nurse, that when determining whether an order was appropriate, you relied on your education? Correct?
Yeah.
Your prior experience?
Yes.
Input or experiences with your peers, your fellow nurses?
Yes.
And also input and time spent with physicians that work with you.
Yes, ma'am.
You relied cumulatively on all those things when you were determining whether a dose or patient care was appropriate.
Yes.
And just so we're clear with respect to the Ryan Hayes order of 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl, you administered that order.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're certainly aware of voice reports within the hospital?
Vaguely.
Like if there was a problem, could you report a problem within the hospital, if you recall?
Yes.
And when you gave that 1,000 or administered that 1,000, we know from the records that you indicated that the patient's pain score was a 10.
Yes, ma'am.
I can assume, would you agree with me that during your time as an ICU nurse, you had the opportunity to work with a number of different critical care physicians?
Yes, ma'am.
And even just Dr. Husel and Dr. Hagris, would you agree with me that even physicians similarly titled and trained do things differently.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was true of Dr. Haggis and Dr. Husel, was it not?
Absolutely.
I know you were asked about it, but two more points. The nursing station, as you recall, there was more than one on the ICU floor?
Yes, ma'am.
And during a palliative extubation and the extubations that you participated in, were there times when you would leave the room to allow the family to have time with their loved one?
Yes.
And when you did that, where generally, in your experience, would you go?
We would go to either the nursing station, or we would go look. If we had to go look at our other patients, we'd go and we'd proceed for assessing our other patient.
And fair to say, if you're at the nursing station, there are monitors there which allow you to continue to see what's going on in the room.
Yes, ma'am.
And while the machines visually and auditorily are shut off in the room, the patient's still being monitored even after they're extubated, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's information that you would continue to have access to as a nurse.
Yes, ma'am.
You were asked about the code changes. I think you were asked about the DNR and CC.
Yes.
And DNR CC. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And DNR CC, the CC stands for comfort care.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And in your experience, you talked about 50-ish palliative extubations.
Yeah.
At that point, when the family or next of kin makes a decision to palliatively extubate their family member or loved one, the focus is on comfort, is it not?
Absolutely.
I just want to go lastly to Dr. Husel. Just in your experience with him over the years when you were at Mount Carmel, he was nice?
Absolutely.
Seemed very smart to you?
Yes.
Approachable?
Oh, yes.
Accessible?
Yes.
Kind of person, if you had an issue, you could go to him?
Absolutely.
And he was receptive to change?
Yes.
And you told the police that, didn't you?
Yes.
And he was even someone that you had a professional relationship with?
Yes.
Yes. And you had a good relationship overall, did you not?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Springer, let's go back to Mr. Allen, or Mr. Hayes, okay? And again, this is State Exhibit 2F. Ryan Hayes? All right, and on cross, you were asked about the pain score of 0 on April 2nd, 2017. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that was 24 hours before he...
Yes.
Let's talk about the pain scores down here. What date were those on?
4/3/2017.
What time?
22:57 and 23:16 or 23:16.
Well, nope, let's go above.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's when you did the 10, correct? The
Yeah.
2316?
It's at 17:40. Oh, jeez. Sorry, I'm like...
No, that's okay. 1749. It's
19,
okay.
21, 21, 21, 22, 59, 118, and 536.
All right. So April 3rd, 2110 is about 2 hours before. Would you agree?
Correct.
And you had a 0.
Yes, sorry.
And that pain score of 10 was when you were, the palliative extubation was occurring?
Not mine. Looks like when Troy did it, I'm assuming that's when it was going on, but mine had already passed. The extubation had already been performed.
Right. And on direct, you indicated that 10 was anticipatory when you entered it.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Bellisari, State's Exhibit 1E. Ms. Bellisari?
Yes, ma'am.
And going back to the note that was on cross-examination, she's intubated at this time
Yes, ma'am.
on a ventilator.
Yes, ma'am.
And that, you indicated that her pain was relieved with that medication.
Yes.
Now, Miss, you were asked on cross-examination regarding the biting down on, if you had observed any pain in her, would you have gone to the doctor for more pain medication?
I would say yes.
When you say anticipatory pain, what do you mean by that, Mr. Springer?
Just because, a person, say, doesn't, how can I phrase it? Just because they may not show signs, you would assume, or you would, if they can't say anything to you, you can still anticipate that they're still going to have pain based off of what has happened to them. Color changes, things like that.
So this is something you're foreseeing could happen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Nash,
thank you.
on the anticipatory.
I do, thank you.
Could I have the exhibit, please? Oh, sorry, that's all right.
Based on that line of questioning, you would agree that anticipatory means you're anticipating something that will happen in the future.
Well, I'm anticipating at the time that something is, I guess, happening. If that answers your question.
It does. I just want to make sure, though, that we have the timeline correct. Right here, where you've entered the pain score is 10, it's 2316, is it not?
Yes.
On 4/3 of 2017.
Yes.
And then I want to go now to the MAR. Or I'll go rather to the order sheet. And fair to say that this is your name right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the time here is 23:15.
Okay. Yes.
So the order predates your entry that the pain was 10.
Yes.
Okay, so to say it was anticipatory, it actually is entered after the order for the medication, correct?
Say that again. Sorry.
2315 comes before 2316.
Yes.
Okay. Nothing further. Thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Why don't we take an early lunch since it doesn't make sense to start somebody for 5 minutes? Let's come back at 1:20.